All right, buckle up for this one because we're diving into a story that sounds like straight out of a sci-fi movie.
It does, doesn't it?
We're talking government efficiency, but
Right.
not the boring kind.
Right.
This deep dive involves Elon Musk,
Oh, yeah.
a controversial team, and a legal battle that could have, sent shockwaves through the whole financial system.
Yeah, it really could have. It's a fascinating case, I think, that really highlights the tension between, that fast-paced world of tech innovation
Right.
and then that kind of slower, more deliberate world of government.
Right. I mean, Elon Musk
Yeah.
leading a team to, streamline the U.S. government,
It's hard to believe.
it's almost hard to believe.
It is, but it happened. Back during the Trump administration, there was a real push to, shrink the size and scope of the government, make it more efficient.
Yeah.
And both Trump and Musk
Right.
were on board with that whole vision.
Right.
That's where the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, comes in.
Okay, DOGE. Catchy name.
It is catchy.
But what were they actually, doing?
So their mandate was broad: identify waste, cut costs, and modernize government operations.
Okay.
They had their sights set on everything from reducing the federal workforce to consolidating real estate and streamlining IT systems.
Makes sense.
But
Yeah.
the real controversy started when they got access to the Treasury's payment system.
Hold on.
Yeah.
The Treasury payment system.
Yeah.
The one that handles things like
Or it handles.
tax refunds and Social Security.
Right.
Why would DOGE need access to that?
That's what a lot of people were wondering.
Yeah.
And it's ultimately what sparked the lawsuit
Mm-hmm.
that brought everything to a screeching halt.
Wow.
So, see, the Treasury's payment system isn't just some, basic accounting software.
Right.
It's a massively complex network
Yeah.
that processes trillions of dollars annually.
Oh, wow.
We're talking about the financial lifeline for, millions of Americans.
Yeah. So DOGE wanted to disrupt that.
Yeah, their goal,
I'm already getting nervous just thinking about it.
as they saw it,
Yeah.
was to find ways to make the system more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe update outdated technology,
Right.
eliminate redundant processes, things like that.
Makes sense.
But critics were worried about the potential risks,
Yeah.
especially given DOGE's somewhat unconventional approach.
Okay, let's talk about that unconventional approach.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be at the heart of the, controversy.
I think so.
What were they doing that was raising so many red flags?
Well, one of the biggest concerns was that
Mhm.
DOGE was largely staffed by, young, relatively inexperienced special government employees.
Oh, okay.
Many of them came from the tech world and had limited experience with the, complexities of government bureaucracy.
Right.
There were worries that they didn't fully grasp the potential consequences
Yeah.
of making major changes to a system as sensitive as, the Treasury's payment network.
So a bit of a clash of cultures happening there.
Exactly.
Silicon Valley meets...
Washington.
And that clash was evident in some of the, specific actions DOGE took.
Oh, okay.
For example, they implemented a hiring freeze at USAO
Oh, wow.
and put a lot of employees on administrative leave,
Really?
seemingly without much warning or explanation.
Oh, wow.
This created chaos
Yeah.
and uncertainty within the agency.
Yeah, I bet.
There were even reports of, people being escorted out of their offices.
Wow, that sounds pretty intense.
It was.
It sounds like DOGE was moving fast,
Yeah,
maybe even recklessly, to achieve their goal.
definitely moving fast.
But what was the reaction from within the government itself?
Yeah, well,
Did everyone just stand by and let this happen?
not at all.
Okay.
There was a lot of pushback
Mm-hmm.
from career government employees,
Mm-hmm.
unions,
Yeah.
even some members of Congress.
Really?
They argued that DOGE was, overstepping its bounds, acting with too much secrecy.
And not fully considering the potential long-term consequences
Makes sense.
of their actions.
So you have this tension building between
Yeah.
DOGE and the established government bureaucracy.
Right.
But then things escalated even further, right?
Right.
19 state attorneys general filed a lawsuit
Yeah.
to stop DOGE.
To try to, yeah.
What were their specific concerns?
So they had a couple of major concerns.
Okay.
First, they argued that DOGE's access to the Treasury payment system was unlawful.
Okay.
They claimed that the administration had overstepped its authority in granting DOGE that level of access.
Right.
Second, and perhaps even more importantly,
Mm-hmm.
they were worried about the potential for data leaks and security breaches.
Yeah.
Remember, this system contains sensitive financial information on millions of Americans.
Yeah, that's not something you want to mess around with.
No, not at all.
So what happened with the lawsuit?
Well, it
Did it actually go anywhere?
went all the way to a federal judge, Judge Engelmeyer,
Yeah.
who ended up issuing an order temporarily halting DOGE's access to the Treasury payment system.
Wow.
And his reasoning was pretty significant.
Okay.
He cited the risk of irreparable harm if their access continued.
Irreparable harm.
Yeah.
That sounds like a judge who's taking the situation very seriously.
Yes.
What exactly did he mean by that?
Well, he was essentially acknowledging the potential for catastrophic damage
Right.
if this system were to be compromised.
Right.
He was worried about data breaches, security failures, even the possibility of disrupting the flow of funds to millions of Americans.
Okay, so we've got a controversial team,
Yeah.
access to a highly sensitive system,
Right.
a lawsuit,
Mm-hmm.
and a federal judge stepping in to hit the brakes.
Yeah, quite a story.
This story is getting more and more intriguing by the minute.
It is.
But where does Elon Musk fit into all of this?
That's a good question.
What was his specific role in DOGE?
That's where things get really interesting. And it's a question that I think a lot of people were asking at the time.
Yeah.
And to understand his role, we need to look at his broader ambitions and how DOGE fit into his vision for the future of government.
Hold on, you're going to leave us hanging there. We need to know more about
You'll have to wait
Elon Musk and DOGE.
for the next part.
Don't worry, listeners. We'll be right back with part 2 of this deep dive, and we'll unpack all of that and more. All right, we're back and ready to unpack Elon Musk's role in this whole DOGE saga.
Right?
You were about to tell us, like, how this all fits into his broader ambitions.
Yeah, so remember that Musk has always been, a big proponent of using technology to solve complex problems.
Right.
He sees inefficiency everywhere.
Yeah.
And believes that, innovation is the key to progress.
Uh-huh.
So in a way,
Yeah.
DOGE was kind of a natural extension of that philosophy.
So he saw an opportunity to apply his disrupt and improve mindset to the government itself.
Yeah.
Kind of like taking the Silicon Valley playbook
Yeah, exactly.
and applying it to Washington.
Right.
Makes sense.
And to be fair, there were a lot of people who were excited
oh, yeah.
about the prospect of, bringing in someone
Right.
with Musk's track record of innovation.
Yeah.
They saw him as someone who could, shake things up,
Mm-hmm.
challenge the status quo, and maybe
Right.
even, find solutions
Yeah.
that career bureaucrats had overlooked for decades.
But as we've seen, that approach also came with some significant risks.
You did.
DOGE's aggressive tactics created a lot of tension
Right.
and even led to accusations of overreach.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the most striking examples of this
Yeah.
clash of styles, I guess you could call it,
Yeah.
was DOGE's approach to workforce reduction.
Workforce reduction, right.
They saw the federal workforce as bloated and inefficient, and they were determined to streamline it. I'm guessing that didn't go over too well
Probably not.
with the people whose jobs were on the line.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Makes sense.
The hiring freezes, the administrative leave, the reports of people being escorted out of their offices.
Oh, yeah.
It all created a climate of fear and uncertainty within the government.
Of course.
Many career civil servants felt like they were under attack,
Right.
that their experience and expertise were being devalued.
It's interesting because on the surface, the idea of making government more efficient sounds pretty appealing, right?
It does.
I mean, who wants to waste taxpayer dollars on bureaucracy?
Nobody wants to do that.
But this story reveals a much more complex reality.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as just saying cut costs
Right.
or reduce the workforce.
Right.
You have to consider the human impact,
Yeah.
the potential disruption to essential services, and the risk of eroding public trust.
And in the case of DOGE, it seems like those risks were very real.
They were.
And the backlash wasn't limited to government employees,
Right.
unions, advocacy groups, and
Yeah.
even some members of Congress. Raised concerns about DOGE's methods and their lack of transparency. They argued that DOGE was operating with too much secrecy and not allowing for adequate public oversight.
Yeah, so...
Okay, so you have this internal pushback,
You do.
the lawsuit from the state attorneys general,
Right.
and a growing sense of unease among the public.
Yeah.
Did DOGE try to address these concerns at all?
Well,
Did they adjust their approach?
there were some attempts at dialogue and engagement,
Oh.
They held some public meetings
Right.
and issued reports outlining their goals and strategies.
Mm.
But for many critics, it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
They felt like DOGE was still operating in a silo,
Right.
that they weren't truly listening to the concerns being raised.
Okay, so it sounds like they doubled down on their approach even in the face of mounting criticism.
Yeah, pretty much.
But you mentioned earlier that this wasn't just about DOGE.
Right.
This was part of a larger trend.
A larger trend.
Yes. No, this...
And this is where things get even more interesting.
Don't leave us in suspense.
The DOGE saga,
Yeah.
while dramatic in its own right,
Right.
was really just one manifestation of a broader phenomenon that's been playing out over the past few years.
Which is?
The increasing involvement of tech entrepreneurs
Oh.
in government and public policy.
Yeah.
We're seeing more and more tech CEOs testifying before Congress,
Right.
donating to political campaigns,
Makes sense.
even starting their own think tanks and advocacy groups.
Okay. I can see that.
Yeah.
Tech is such a dominant force in our lives now. It makes sense that these companies and their leaders would want to have a say in how things are run.
Right.
But what's driving this trend?
Yeah.
Is it purely about altruism? Well, do they genuinely believe they have the solutions to society's problems?
I think it's a
Or is there something else at play?
I think it's a mix of factors.
Okay.
There's definitely a sense of, social responsibility among many tech leaders. They see the potential for technology
Right.
to address issues like climate change,
Mm-hmm.
poverty,
Yeah.
and inequality.
Of course.
And they want to use their skills and resources
Right.
to make a positive difference.
That's admirable.
It is.
But I'm also a little wary of this idea of tech CEOs as saviors.
I understand that.
Yeah.
It feels like we're placing a lot of faith in a small group of people who, let's be honest,
Right.
haven't always had the public's best interests at heart.
Yeah, that's a valid concern.
It is.
And I think that's why the DOGE story is so important.
Yeah, I think so too.
It serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that good intentions aren't always enough.
Right.
When you have this kind of concentration of power, even in the hands of well-meaning individuals, there's always the potential for things to go wrong.
There is, yeah.
Right. And it makes you wonder if someone like Elon Musk, with all his resources and brilliance, couldn't make this work. Does that mean the system is just too broken to fix?
That's a big question.
It is.
And one that we'll explore further
Yeah.
in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
But before we get there,
Yeah.
I think it's important to, step back and consider the bigger picture.
Right.
The DOGE saga,
Yeah.
while dramatic in its own right, was really just a reflection of a much larger debate
Okay.
about the role of technology in society,
Right.
the balance of power between the public and private sectors, and the very nature of government itself.
Okay, now you're really getting me thinking.
Good.
This is more than just a story about government efficiency gone wrong.
I think so.
This is about fundamental questions of democracy, accountability, and the future of our society.
Exactly.
Wow.
And those are questions that we all need to be grappling with.
Yeah.
Regardless of, our political beliefs or our tech savvy. So as we move into the final part of this deep dive,
Okay.
keep those questions in mind.
All right, listeners, get ready for the final act
It is quite a story.
of this fascinating and somewhat unsettling story.
It is.
We'll be right back with the conclusion of our deep dive into DOGE and the Treasury. Okay, so we're back, and I feel like, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
A controversial team, access to a sensitive financial system, a high-stakes legal battle, and the shadow of Elon Musk kind of looming over it all.
Right.
But you left us with a bit of a cliffhanger, right?
I did.
You said this whole DOGE story was part of a much larger trend.
It is, yeah. And to understand that trend, I think it's helpful to look at it through the lens of, disruption.
Right.
Silicon Valley has built its entire ethos around disrupting, established industries, finding new ways to do things, and often moving fast and breaking things along the way.
Right. And we've seen that playbook work in areas like transportation, communication, even retail.
Right.
But can that same approach work when it comes to something as complex and entrenched as, the federal government?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is.
And the DOGE case suggests that it's not that simple.
Right.
Government isn't just another industry ripe for, disruption.
Right.
It's the foundation of our democracy.
Yeah.
The mechanism through which we, collectively make decisions and provide for the common good.
So are you saying that government is like inherently resistant to change?
I don't know if I'd say inherently resistant, but there's certainly room for improvement.
Right.
And technology can play a role in that.
Of course.
But we have to be careful about applying a purely, tech-driven approach to government.
Makes sense.
We can't just assume that the solutions that work in the private sector will automatically translate to the public sphere.
Okay, so how do we strike that balance? How do we harness the power of technology to, improve government without sacrificing the things that make government work in the first place?
Right.
Things like transparency.
Right, all of that.
Accountability. And the rule of law.
That's the challenge, isn't it?
It is.
And I don't think there's an, easy answer.
Right.
But I do think that the DOGE case offers some valuable lessons.
Okay.
First, it highlights the importance of expertise and experience.
Yeah.
You can't just parachute a team of, tech whizzes into a complex government agency and expect them to, fix everything overnight.
Right. They may be brilliant coders or product developers.
Right.
But governing is a different skill set altogether.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Second, I think this case underscores the need for transparency and public engagement.
Right.
DOGE operated with a level of secrecy that ultimately backfired.
Yeah.
They didn't do enough to explain their goals, their methods, or the potential risks to the public.
Right.
And that lack of transparency,
of course,
bred distrust, and ultimately undermined their efforts.
It sounds like a classic case of move fast and break things gone wrong.
It does, doesn't it?
But what about the argument that, sometimes you need to disrupt things in order to make progress?
Right.
So that sometimes you need to, shake up the system to get things moving in the right direction.
I understand that argument.
Yeah.
And there's certainly a time and a place for, bold action. But when it comes to government, I think we need to be extra cautious.
Okay.
The stakes are simply too high.
Yeah.
We're talking about, people's lives, their livelihoods, their fundamental rights.
Of course.
We can't afford to experiment with those things in the same way that, tech company might experiment with a new product or service.
So if we're going to bring technology into government, and it seems like that's inevitable at this point.
I think it is.
How do we do it responsibly?
That's the question.
How do we ensure that it's used to empower citizens, not control them?
Yeah.
To, enhance democracy.
Enhance, not
undermine it.
I think that starts with having a clear understanding of the values that we want to, uphold.
Right.
Transparency, accountability, fairness, due process. These are the principles that should guide, any effort to modernize or reform government.
And those principles need to be, baked into the technology itself, right?
Absolutely.
It's not enough to just say, oh, we'll worry about the ethics later.
Nope. We need to be thinking about the ethical implications of technology from the very beginning of the design process. And we need to have strong safeguards in place to ensure that those ethical considerations are not overlooked or overridden in the pursuit of efficiency or innovation.
This has been a really thought-provoking conversation.
It has been.
We've gone from talking about a seemingly obscure government team to grappling with some of the most fundamental questions facing our society.
And those questions aren't going away anytime soon.
Yeah, I don't think they are.
As technology continues to, evolve at an exponential pace, the line between the public and private sectors is going to become increasingly blurred.
Yeah, it already feels that way sometimes.
It does.
So where does that leave us?
Right.
What's the takeaway for our listeners?
I think.
What should they be thinking about as they go about their day interacting with technology and engaging with their government?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we all have a role to play in shaping the future of, technology and government.
Right.
We can't just leave it to the tech CEOs or the politicians to figure it out.
Makes sense.
We need to be informed, engaged, and willing to ask, tough questions.
Right. We can't just be passive consumers of technology.
Sure.
We need to be active citizens demanding that technology is used in a way that benefits all of us.
Yes.
Not just a select few.
Exactly. And I think the DOGE story, as unsettling as it is, can serve as like a catalyst for that conversation. It can remind us that even the most, well-intentioned efforts can go awry if we're not careful.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it can inspire us to, demand more from our leaders, from our tech companies, and from ourselves.
Well, listeners, there you have it.
It's quite a story.
A deep dive into a story that's both fascinating and a little bit frightening.
Yeah, it is.
What are your thoughts? What lessons do you take away from this whole DOGE saga? How do you think technology should be used in government? We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, let us know.
And until next time, keep questioning.
Keep questioning.
Keep exploring.
Keep exploring and keep diving deep. And keep diving deep.